All right, Misha.
Yes.
Misha, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I'm from Reno, Nevada.
Reno.
It's a tiny little mountain town in northern Nevada.
Yes, I know Reno.
Oh, do you know Reno? Yeah. Everybody that knows Reno, they either love it or they hate it.
It's like a third-rate Las Vegas.
It is, exactly. It's like a D list, D minus list, Las Vegas, for
And,
sure.
and tell me about your childhood.
I actually had a really wonderful childhood. I had a childhood that was very blessed, and we lived in a household that was very supportive. And they glorified our achievements, but we were never punished for our failures. And so it was an environment that really bred positivity and individualism. So I really had a blessed childhood, which is kind of weird for people to accept because they expect people in sex work and the adult industry especially to have some kind of childhood trauma or damage or come from a broken home. And I did not come from a broken home. My father is an attorney. My mother worked at Starbucks for 13 years. And it really was just a wonderful, wonderful childhood. And I had every opportunity available to me that I wanted. And I went to college. My degree paths, I double majored in psychology and political science with an emphasis in foreign affairs. So I value my education over everything that I have.
Good for you.
Thank you.
And yet you still chose this path.
And I did. And that's what people find highly peculiar and unusual is that how could somebody that comes from a mostly normal background with an education ever decide to turn to sex work? And I've always been interested in the adult entertainment world. From a very young age, I wanted to be in porn. And
How young in age?
I was about 8 or 9 years old. And I think like at that age,
Where does an eight-year-old even get exposed to porn?
true. I was never really exposed to actually hardcore porn. I was more exposed to the female figures of Playboy and Baywatch, and
And that stuff's out there everywhere.
it's everywhere. It's more of the mainstream iconic figures. When I was in high school, I had a picture of Jenna Jameson in my room, and most people would find that grotesque or that these women are foul and they're just perverse whores. And to me, I was someone who was bullied my whole life. Those women, in my mind, they weren't disgusting. They were very beautiful, empowering, strong, demanding, or commanding, I guess you could say. Their presence was so powerful. So I didn't see perversion. I saw power. And I think when you can harness that sexual energy, it does give you a sense of power. And for me, who was just terrified of everyone my whole life, I craved that. I wanted that. So to become that was the ultimate goal in my mind, because then people would like you and accept you and you'd have a platform and have all this power to do anything you wanted to do and just conquer the world. And that's what I decided to do.
And you started sex work at what age?
I started sex work at 18, and I was in and out. I had my toe in and out of the adult industry
In what form?
for about 10 years. I was into BDSM, adult modeling. I started doing a little bit of video stuff here and there, but never for big companies or anybody really reputable. So, and because of this stigma, this socially constructed idea that porn is inherently bad and negative, I bought into that in a way. Like as much as I'm such a proponent for sex work and for being in that industry and everyone in that industry, I did buy in. You buy into it. You buy into that stigma a little bit, where you can't help but second guess yourself. And I had a professor. I was in college, and I told them that I wanted to do porn. I have no shame in admitting that. And he pulled me aside, and I was like, oh, great, I'm going to get in trouble now because I want to do porn. And it wasn't even the nature of what I said. It was the fact that I wanted to do porn when I had the ability to do literally anything else. And they were disappointed. And that was really devastating to me, because I'm like, why does it have to be that way? Why do you have to be damaged or have it be a last ditch resort? It should just be something like everything else. It's a job, it's a career. And that doesn't define my character. It doesn't define me as a mother or as a friend or as a lover or anything else. That's my job. And to be totally ostracized by society because of something that you do for a living that a majority of the population consumes, I've never been able to understand that. So it was kind of my mission to change that perspective, and using myself as a martyr for that cause, I guess, too. And I will tell you that it's far more difficult than I ever imagined.
There's a lot of harsh judgment.
It's a lot. And I can deal with the judgment from other people because I've accepted that other people are never going to necessarily agree with what you do. My hope would be that you don't have to agree, but I would hope that some point you come to, you'll realize that there are other people in this world that exist and have different opinions and different viewpoints on the world. And they have every right to exist and be happy just as much as you do. So it's not even changing people's minds to get them to accept it fully. It's just to acknowledge our existence and our same right to the things that they have too. So it was much more difficult than I ever expected. And it came from people within my own family and friends of mine, and having people look you in the eye and say, you can't come to our family dinners anymore. Our children can't play together. Those kind of things are devastating because when it comes from a third party and a stranger, you anticipate that kind of judgment and shame. But to hear it from within your own circle, it's how am I supposed to change the world or even just the perspective of people that are immediately opposed to me when I can't even change the minds of some people in my circle. And that was the most devastating part to me, is to hear that from people. But as soon as that blow, the pain from the blow subsides, then it just makes it that much more important to change it. And so it enhances my drive and, this hunger that I have to try to prove a point.
Do you feel like Americans are uptight about sex?
Oh, 100%. I think Americans it's such a repressed.
It's not just Americans.
No, it's not. But I think it's kind of ironic that in America, it's actually.
But Europeans are probably much more open.
They are very much so open, very much so open in Europe, far more so than in America. And a lot of, this repression is rooted in religion. And it's unfortunate because you see often these situations, the people that are the harshest opponents and critics are the ones who are secretly engaging in taboo things themselves.
Exactly.
So it's the biggest hypocrites are the ones that usually are consuming more than anyone else. If we had an open and honest conversation about sex, we could make a huge difference in this world. I truly believe that would make a difference. So that's what I want to start, those uncomfortable conversations and have them. We're all sexual creatures. We're all products of sex. We all have sex. We all consume sex at some point. So this taboo feelings and the stigma, this negative energy that's attached to sex in general and even our own bodies, and particularly sex work in the adult industry, it's dangerous, and it's terrifying. I get death threats regularly. I had people say the most horrible things to me that I couldn't even imagine, like saying to anyone, let alone a complete stranger, strictly based on what I do for a living. I've had threats against my family and all kinds of just really horrible things, and I don't even blame those people. I feel sorry for them. But that, again, makes it all the more important that we open up the conversation and try to shed light into the human side of this industry. We're all human beings at the end of the day. And regardless of what we do for work, we are all humans. I'm someone's daughter. I'm someone's mother. So I should be entitled to the same rights even to live and to work and to happiness and health like everyone else.
So you've been a porn actress for how long?
I've actually only been in industry porn for 2 years, and I'm multi-award nominated at this point. I'm also a director.
What awards have you won?
I haven't won any yet. Fingers crossed. I have one tomorrow.
What have you been nominated for?
Performer of the Year is the biggest one. I have a showcase DVD called The Exploitation of Misha Montana, which is actually a documentary style showcase that I did last year. And it's unlike anything that's ever been done in the adult industry because it opened up into my personal life. And no one's ever really done it to that extent. I shared and sacrificed everything for that. Every element of privacy, everything. I talk about my family and my son and all these different things. And I'm lucky enough that it was so critically acclaimed and it was accepted by the adult community. It was nominated for every single major award show as a best feature. And so now it's 6 total nominations for best movie. So
would you describe yourself as happy with this career?
I'm so happy. And I struggled for so long with going back and forth between, I worked as an executive assistant for a major politician in Nevada, and I worked in law firms. I was going to go to law school. I had all these different career paths chosen for me, and I was never fulfilled. And I knew deep down that's what I wanted to do. And I wasn't being honest to myself. Even though I'm capable and intelligent enough to do those things and had all the resources and the tools that a lot of people don't have, this is what I wanted to do. And it brings me so much joy, but it gives me so much purpose in my life too, especially because I suffered a stroke last year. And that was the highlight of the documentary.
How old are you?
I'm 32.
32, and you suffered a stroke.
I had a stroke.
So what was the cause of that?
I had a stroke from the COVID-19 vaccine. It caused a blood clot that traveled to my heart. And at the time, I wasn't aware that I had a heart condition. I had what they call a PFO, which is a hole in your heart. So when I had the clot, it broke off and it went to my heart, and my heart pumped it through the hole to the left side of my brain. So I was right side stroke affected. I lost all feeling in my face and it drooped out. I lost control of the right side of my body completely. I couldn't talk. And it was frightening experience to have. And consequently, I had heart surgery about a month later. But when I went to the hospital, I was in about 5 days. And the whole time I was just so concerned about my career more than anything. Obviously, first and foremost, being alive, but I mean, my career was a close second. I was planning my comeback scene from my hospital bed. And so 2 weeks later, I had a full heart monitor on, and I actually did a full scene with a heart monitor on 2 weeks later. And people thought I was crazy for doing that. They still do. It was nominated, so there's that.
So you're very open.
I'm very open
About everything that's going on in your life.
Everything. Well, and so that gave me the opportunity. It was kind of the tool that I needed. I've always wanted to advocate for the human side of this industry from the beginning. And it was this weird, unexpected gift in the form of tragedy that I used as an opportunity at a second chance. And with this second chance, I won't waste it. So I've become an advocate for stroke awareness. And as ironic as it is, people message me, hundreds of messages that I've gotten from survivors, from people that have had a family member that's had a stroke or other major illness. And they thank me for being open about it, because it's not difficult or it's not easy to put yourself out there. Even when you're already in the spotlight, I was always the most publicly private person. I would give you exactly what I wanted to and reserve my very private parts of my life for myself. So when you rip that wide open to the whole world and nothing is secret and nothing is sacred, it's difficult psychologically to go through that and emotionally. But to me, it is absolutely worth it. If I can be the martyr for this cause, I have to share everything. I can't be a hypocrite. I have to share literally everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I am going to be honest and transparent with everything that I do in the hopes that you see me as a human being and you see that, hey, I have the same struggles that you have, or someone you may know, has. And I still won't let that fill me with resentment or hatred. And it will be something that I hope you find inspiring and at least give you the strength to get out of bed in the morning and do something that you may not have thought you could do. So I want to be an uplifting figure the best that I can be. And in so doing, I have to sacrifice some elements of my life to do that. And it is worth it to me, as difficult as it is from time to time.
And being a porn actress, technology has changed things a lot.
It has. And
is it more difficult to make money now?
It is. It's extremely difficult. It's highly competitive now. It's a really saturated market.
You're competing against amateurs.
Oh yeah, I mean the barista down the street has an OnlyFans now. So it's just this, and that's dangerous in itself too. Because as much as I support sex work, and I think everyone that wants to do this career should have the opportunity to do it and go in, knowing that they can make money and make it a successful, lucrative, long-term career, you have to understand that just because something became popular, it doesn't erase the consequences. You are sacrificing potentially every other opportunity. As much as I hate that idea and I'm working to fight against it, it's still reality, unfortunately.
There's a lot of stigma against it.
There's so much stigma. And that just because it's become popular doesn't mean that goes away. So I always tell people, I fully support your decision to get into porn. I hope people that are looking to get into porn would reach out to someone like myself, because it can be overwhelming and dangerous and competitive. And there's things that you never thought in a million years you'd have to know that you need to know, legalities and, things about your health and getting tested regularly and all these different elements that go into this business that people are just completely ignorant of. And I always tell them, if you want to do porn, you imagine every other door that you had open closing. And are you okay with that? And also, imagine the person that you would not want to hear that you're doing porn, their reaction. And would you still do it? Because I'll tell you right now from personal experience, all of those things are true. And they're very difficult to deal with emotionally, very difficult. So if you can do that and accept that, and that's something that you can want to continue to do and go forward with, then I fully support that decision. But you have to be aware that there are real life consequences to this.
How do you deal with those, I'm assuming, judgmental things that will come up in your life?
It's difficult because...
Like your grandmother, probably.
Right, yeah. Well, my father was the hardest one. My mother's actually really receptive, and half of my family cut me off completely, which was unexpected. The other half, it's kind of a mix where they accept it, we just don't discuss it, which I think is, if you don't agree with it, then that's fine. We don't have to discuss it. No one needs to know how my day was in my family. But my father is an attorney, and he's very open-minded himself. But again, it was back to that same scenario with the professor where I feel like he thinks it's wasted potential. And that stigma comes to your mind where he's looking at me as less than. And I see it in his eyes. He's just riddled with disappointment, and he does not understand it at all. And that's something that's really difficult to deal with. But having those conversations, those difficult conversations, and telling him, like, I'm happy, I'm healthy, my son is well taken care of, and I'm working to provide a life for him that will be unimaginable.
Your son lives with you?
He does live with me. I have 100% custody of my son. So I am a single mother, and he has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. So he has special needs, which is a full-time job in itself. So I'm trying to build this brand and have a lucrative career, and also make sure that my son is well
You have a
provided.
very interesting life.
It's very interesting. It's very chaotic.
How does all of this affect you emotionally?
It's difficult.
The judgment from being a porn actress, the son who's special needs,
when I've gone through different like checkpoints in my life of being more patient and tolerant, and the first one was deciding to do porn, and then hearing my son's diagnosis. That was probably the biggest turning point in my life that really changed my perspective. I've always had a unique perspective, and have been empathetic, and probably more so than any other person I've ever met. But that really just grounded me completely. And then after the stroke, I started having really serious depression because I have aphasia, permanent aphasia from that. So my life was already difficult to manage as it was. What's that?
Aphasia?
Aphasia.
What is that?
It's memory loss. So I deal with consistent memory loss. Sometimes I don't remember the day. I definitely wouldn't remember what I did 3 days ago unless I wrote it down.
It's confirmed that this was from the COVID
Yes.
vaccination?
Yes. There's mixed opinions about it, but the majority of the doctors that I have that came to the conclusion that's what it was from. The only other option that they suggested was from COVID itself, but that didn't make sense when I had COVID 6 months prior.
You've been perfectly healthy your whole
Perfectly healthy.
There's no drugs?
No drugs. No, I drink for sure, but they didn't think that was a factor. I don't have high blood pressure. There were no other medical issues that, I would have that would contribute to that. So I actually started drinking really heavily after the stroke, which is the opposite thing that you should do when you have a stroke, by the way. But I fell into this really severe depression and anxiety. And at one point, several months ago, I contemplated suicide for the first time. And that was a really interesting experience. I was standing in the kitchen and I was having just a full-blown mental breakdown. And I was drunk and just miserable. And I had reached a breaking point. I never recovered after my stroke. I never allowed myself the time to recover that I needed because I couldn't. I have to be super mom, and I have to keep working. I can't stop doing this. There are too many people that rely on me. And in doing so, I buried myself too deep. And sometimes that happens where you reach that point. And when you're riding the tracks at 100 miles an hour towards a cliff, you might go over the edge at some point. So I did, and I was standing in the kitchen. I had a wine opener in my hand. And the darkest moment in my life was I literally thought about just shoving it into my throat. And I was a hair away from actually doing it. And that put a lot of things into perspective for me too. It's like, you have to take care of yourself. Your mental health is so critically important, and in America especially, it's ignored often. And when you have invisible illnesses like that I have, and a lot of people have, the majority of the population has some form of invisible illness. So it's a vast majority, but it's a silent vast majority for the most part, because there's shame and stigma attached to that. So opening up these things, and I share these things publicly, because I think it's critically important that people have those conversations that are difficult to have so that we can get awareness and provide resources and have access to medical care and mental health care. It's so important to do. So again, I sacrifice those intimate moments in my life that I probably wouldn't, most people would never tell anyone that or want anyone to know that. And I don't feel shame in that. I hope that it's relatable and that it's something that people can overcome, as I did too. So it's all a learning experience. And if people can live vicariously through me, then I hope it helps to some degree.
Is there something in your personality that maybe you've always had since you were young that just makes you want to venture where no one else has gone before?
Definitely.
That's what I see in stories.
It's very much so biological.
You're very courageous.
Thank you. I sometimes I don't feel like it, but thank you. I've had it since I was a child, and these life events have only reinforced it. I think not saying that I handle every situation appropriately, but every situation that I have that, is adverse, I use it as a moment for learning. And how can I better myself or use this to help other people in the sense too? And that's always been my first priority. So I hope it does help at some point.
That's great. Do you have any regrets in your life?
No, I don't, that's a whole, what's this? No regrets. I think it's okay to have regrets, but I think that every situation that I've been in that's been negative has led to something more positive, or it's built my foundation to be stronger to withstand other things that I experience down the line. And so therefore, I'm actually very thankful for those moments. As tragic as they may be, as difficult as they are, as painful as they are, they're beautiful moments if you look at them that way, as an opportunity to grow yourself and to really slow down and actually listen to yourself too, and maybe rearrange your plans and strategize differently for the next time around. So every moment that's dark is something that I use as a tool to better myself, and I even use it creatively too. So I definitely get a lot of inspiration from those painful moments in life that I try to turn into something beautiful. So
that's great.
Thank you.
Misha, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in your life?
The most important lesson that I've learned in my life, I think it would be to not be so hard on yourself or take what other people say about you too seriously. I was bullied for most of my life, and hence why I turned to those beautiful women that were powerful figures. I'm teaching my son this every day also. Your career doesn't define you. Your money, your success, all of those things are not real. What you have at the end of the day is you, your character, and that's how people will remember you. Were you a compassionate person? Were you a kind person? Were you giving? Are you happy in your life? Those are things that no one can take away from you as much as they want to. They'll never be able to take that away from you. And if you have those things as a strong foundation, all these other superficial things don't matter. And once you strip that away, what do you have at the end of the day? So to me, the most important thing in life is how I'm going to be remembered. And if half the world doesn't agree with what I do for a living, at the end of the day, no one can say that I was a bad person, hopefully. So those are things that I'm trying to instill in my son as well. So how we leave this world is the most important thing. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about life too. And I wish more people would see that. So if they saw that, then if people had more compassion and didn't focus so heavily on hatred and anger, then the world would be such a more beautiful, happy place. So if I can do it and spread a little bit of that, then at least we're working towards something positive.
That's great. Misha, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Mark.
So
it's a
interesting.
Pleasure. Thank you. It's crazy.
Yes, it is.